It is time to engage! Alright, gang. 7 of 9 on Picard, Stardust City Rag. Let's talk about this. It is a fascinating story that never once goes to the artifact. I think that is definitely a benefit to this episode.
Pacing-wise,
you guys? This is another Frakes episode, and I feel like it has a pretty neat pace to it, especially when you consider very few locations and scenes are necessary to tell this story. And yet, once again, it begins 13 years before. Begins with a flashback. Poise, I know you hate that. How did you feel about this gruesome flashback at the beginning?
Wow, that was harsh. Especially because it's a character that we know.
Just not an actor that we know.
He's just not an actor we know. They changed the actor, but I thought that was gruesome. It sort of threw me off a little bit. I think especially for Star Trek, maybe a little bit. It sort of it was a little bit sobering to sort of see that. It sort of felt like a horror movie for a second there.
Yeah, it's like watching Saw.
Yeah.
It was brutal. And it was interesting when she pulled out his eye and it had wires. Yeah. Not muscles and tendons and optical nerves. But it kind of reminds you that when you reconstruct a Borg, an XB is machine that you can't see. They're hiding the parts that might be off-putting to a human. But that eye is not an eye. It's a digital device connected to, I guess, an ocular implant. And so that's a fascinating thing to consider about someone like 7 of 9. I mean, one of her eyes is not her eye either.
That eye is not
that's
her
not
eye.
her. I mean, I always just assumed they cloned an eye or something. Right. But to see a wire come out and get snipped off like that, it was like, oh shit, maybe this is just like advanced visor technology from Geordi.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
It was fun and creepy.
Yeah, that woman who's doing the work, Vanya. What did you think about? Where's your eye implant, buddy?
I don't like the buddy, like the sweetness of it. It was really gross and creepy, and I did not like her. And glad she's a gonzo. Yeah. But and the glass and the nice music.
Yes, just
well, he doesn't have any anesthesia. I don't. What's the point of doing that anyway?
Maybe she needs him to answer the question.
Maybe she needs him to be alive so that so that she can find everything. Ugh, it's very creepy.
But it is like the most gruesome thing since I guess season 1 of Discovery.
Yes.
When we saw people inside out.
Yes. It's been that was some of the most gore that we've ever seen in Star Trek, and so this is akin to that, I guess. It was really sad to see 7 of 9 have to
putting Jeb down.
Her child, basically.
Yeah.
Which is a mirror to like Picard and his kid, pseudo kid.
Yeah.
So they both have like, children.
Yeah.
And they're both
after
these like, ex-Borg people.
Yeah, it was neat the way this episode allowed them to play their. They're each having such different subversions of who we knew them to be, and they do have this Borg connection that they really just actually discuss at the end, which is interesting. I thought it was weird that they recast Icheb, and I thought it was weird that Icheb was described as a lieutenant and a science officer and was wearing command red. Science officers were blue.
Yes.
It's little things like this that make me feel like these people aren't making the same show, or they're not paying attention to the details in their own show, or they've never paid enough attention to the show that came before this show.
And you want just a little bit more respect there. And it's like they should have like one person in a show or a small team that's devoted to just those consistencies that make it really tight and really beautiful. And when we go back and look at episodes, you're going to like love those details.
Yeah, I mean, the best science fiction shows have a science advisor on staff that makes sure that, like Battlestar Galactica had Kevin Grazier on there. And that guy used to work at NASA's JPL. So if you worked at the Jet Propulsion Lab, you know some shit. And that is the kind of person you want to have to keep your science right. Well, you kind of need some kind of hyper Trekkie to be in your writing room, even just to sit there and just swat flies for you. You're like, nope, that should be blue. Nope, that Romulan warper can't warp. Like, that's it.
But I would say...
No, I mean, if they're working on the other stuff, the storyline, and then that person's just there as a outsider, like an eye that looks at everything as what it is to canon. And everything doesn't have to be exact canon. You're building your own canon. They're already doing it with the Romulans. We're learning new things.
Yeah.
So it's not like they have to be insulted about the fact that we want some of the things from the past.
Yeah.
Just inject it in.
But especially because we know that Star Trek and Star Wars fans are hardcore.
Yeah.
Like, this is not Mission Impossible where it's like, did Ethan Hunt have a wife? We don't really care about Ethan Hunt. These are characters we're invested in.
Do so much.
We're invested in, right? And there's a hardcore fan base that it's important to get details like that accurate.
And it's not a surprise. Like, it's not like in 2019 and 2020, all of a sudden Star Trek fans got hardcore.
We're the original, like, hardcore fans.
Yeah.
Right.
We're the first, I think, fans that wrote to try and save.
That held conventions.
To try and save.
That got mad
that
at
whole,
actors for
why
not
you
knowing
have all
things.
these fan cons and everything.
Yeah.
It's all based on Star Trek fans. So that's like the worst group to not be detailed
That's
right.
with. We're the worst group.
Yeah. We're bastards.
Probably.
So careful.
We're probably a little bit nicer to Star Wars fans, but
These days, yeah, maybe.
But only a little bit.
Yeah, not that much. I think Discovery pissed off as many people as The Last Jedi. I think it's a pretty even.
Yeah.
It's an even amount. So I'd like to also talk about how Bruce Maddox finally shows his face in this episode, and it's not his face.
Yes,
it's another new actor, which is fascinating because in this case, the actor who played Bruce Maddox hasn't really done anything for 10 or 15 years. That's, I shouldn't say anything. He hasn't done film or television that is on like IMDb. Right. So I don't know what he's up to, but not this. So that was interesting. The beard made me wonder the whole time. I was like, is that him? I don't think that's him.
I think
I
that's
thought
why
that
they
for a
did.
minute.
I felt like that's why they did it.
Yeah, it's a good choice.
Hide to kind of like, oh, will they know? They probably won't know.
Yeah, and it to their credit, it did a fine job of masking him under
and he
that
was good,
hair.
and the actor was good.
I liked him, yeah. I liked him a lot. I also really... This episode for me was when I officially fell in love with Elnor. That moment when they get to Free Cloud and everybody
the
gets...
from Winnie the Pooh. Elnor.
Elnor. Oh, Elnor. You mean not the High King of Rivendell?
Also that.
So Elnor not getting a little
like ad?
CGI ad sent at him that he could fight. He was very upset, and that was lovely. And then that moment when he realized that everyone was playing a character, he was like, oh, everyone is lying. I was just like, oh, my heart.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's so sweet.
It's such a Drax type of character.
Yeah,
Oh my God, wait a minute. I just got that.
Are you Elnor? Are you?
No, wait a minute. I just realized I got that scene, but it's because he was living with the...
He's absolute canon.
Yeah,
He's not used to
absolute-
any of this.
He's not used to the lying
Deception
thing.
Yeah.
is not a thing.
Of
He doesn't
course.
get
He hasn't
treachery.
done it his whole life.
Yeah.
Of course.
The whole cast is
You don't
being
remember-
Romulans,
Yeah.
and he's like, I don't know how to be a Romulan. That's pretty
Right,
good.
he wouldn't.
It's really sweet, and it's like refreshing because it seems it's so sincere, unlike Agnes, who is so not sincere. That like when she stumbles in and she's like, "Can I join?" In the previous episode, "Can I join this meeting? Am I part of the crew now?" And I'm like, "Girl, I don't know about you." Like,
Maybe Raffi should have run that security check.
Should have.
Listen, it's killing me.
I know.
Although, to be fair, when we find out what it is that that made her willing to, well, spoiler alert for the end of the episode, kill Maddox, it must, I imagine it comes down to Commodore O in that one moment where she was like, oh, by the way, this bad thing. But unfortunately, that means it was a Romulan who told you that, so she was probably lying, which means you just killed your boyfriend for nothing.
Yeah.
Or you're just bad.
Yeah.
Maybe Agnes is bad.
By the way, did you...
It's
was
possible.
it telegraphing? At what point did you know that she was going to kill Maddox?
Because
I felt it coming from like a... I don't know.
Yeah. When she... Just her anxiousness to find him wasn't like a girlfriend that wanted to find somebody like her that was concerned. She's like keeping a bunch of stuff back about him, which I think is weird because everybody's kind of like on the surface about, except Raffi is like on about what they want. And then when she was just like, Yeah, oh God, they got him. Okay, great. You know what I mean? But it's like shifty. She was shifty.
Yeah.
You know, and then when she was eavesdropping.
Yeah. I'm like, okay,
I was like,
he's dead.
Dude, she's like in love with this guy.
It was very clear.
She doesn't have to be like eavesdropping on this conversation.
And the way it was shot so that you had her in the foreground looking really concerned, and behind her is her lover that she hasn't seen for quite some time.
And he's dying.
And
she's not like, are you okay?
pain.
Are you? Like, she wasn't like that. It was
pretty clear that some bad shit was coming Maddox's way.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's because we're like jaded
and waiting for the story to move.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. We like saw through some of
it was also very clear when the chowder spouting began and Maddox started telling Picard absolutely every detail he needed to be able to do the next episode.
Yeah.
And then was like, okay, Picard, it's all right. You're like, okay, well, you've only explained everything necessary for episode 6.
Yeah. Great. She was, like, Alison Pill's been very much, like, I know she was on an Aaron Sorkin show before, but she's very much still on that show. Like, to me, like, you know, and, like, she was like, there's a line in West Wing where one of the characters says, "You're stupid, but you're not stupid." You know what I mean? And that's what she's playing. Like she's doing like an Aaron Sorkin.
You're dumb, but you're not so dumb.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, ooh, why can't anyone see that except for Raffi?
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I thought was interesting was that as we're sitting there watching Maddox say just what's necessary again for the characters to learn things, it's stuff we know as the audience. Once again, this show has managed to waste our time.
They had these challenges, the same challenges on Discovery, where it was like, we know this, we know the characters. You're supposed to let the characters in the show keep going forward. You don't have to keep telling us stuff that you've already told us.
Yeah.
You've already done the lesson. So now we need new information
to keep us interested.
Yeah, and we don't need to be, we don't need to line up with the characters. Yeah. Right? Because we already have that.
Yeah, we need to know what's being said as it's being said, not before they already say it. Like that to me was what has bugged me in several episodes of this show. So this is no longer a who wrote the episode problem. This is a who's running the season problem, where we are just wasting time, where the audience is not learning things.
It's like they're not looking at the whole trajectory and being like, okay, well, these are the places where they don't need to, they've already discovered this. Now let's...
Yeah, you can have Maddox say, Picard, let me tell you where Soji is. And then cut away to something else. We don't need to hear that. I mean, it was nice in this episode to not have to see it, to not have to see her on the artifact falling in love with Dreamboat Romulan liar. But, God...
They were ice skating. We were trying to figure out what they were doing with the...
They're ice skating in the previous episode.
I wasn't
sure what that was.
Yeah, it just was not a good date at all.
It's funny. Sometimes they do it, and they're good at keeping something from us and then revealing later that this thing happened. But I'm always concerned now that every time they do that, we're going to get another version of that.
Absolutely.
You know? It would have been like if Raffi showed up on the ship again and we saw it and Rios was like, hey, and then he was like, oh, what about our stowaway? And then he went and Picard. But they didn't do that. That's a good example of moving something forward, us learning something that we didn't know.
Yeah,
and that should be how they do things.
Right.
Yeah, that storyline with Raffi's son was fascinating. And her definition of being clean, I find hilarious.
It was like 2 seconds.
Yeah, she's like just not currently cracked out. That's not clean. That's
I was cracked out on Thursday.
Yeah.
But I'm good today.
Yeah,
today it's Friday.
Weird.
She hasn't been. He's right to be angry
and suspicious,
but also not because she's right. Like she's gonna discover that she's been right from the beginning.
Yep.
Right. Like.
These Romulans completely caused the Mars attack.
And this poor woman is like, listen, I know. And sure, her family was like neglected, but I think she was thinking about the universe.
Yeah. Priorities, man. Priorities.
And it made me feel even more sad for her, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you, just touching on that point, how do you feel about, I was discussing that with my partner, about characters who have these sort of estranged kids who are like, I don't love you anymore, Mom, and we're Dad, you weren't there for me anymore, and
that works.
Haven't we seen that a lot?
Yeah, but that happens a lot.
That happens a lot,
like
especially
narcissistic parents and abandonment.
And
like
people
this is a huge problem.
Which is like kind of like military, right?
Yes.
That's even more so, which she is.
But
like,
she was saving the world.
Yeah.
And saving the universe. Don't you go, well, you get a pass.
Kids don't understand that.
No. They're just like, you're not a
But he's an adult.
You're not an
adult now, but what he felt then is has made up who he's become.
When mom is not at your hockey practice, that's all it needs.
And it's informed who he has become now.
Yeah.
He kind of did it without her.
And then the last
didn't come to my piano recital. It's like,
and
I'm saving the galaxy.
But the guy's what?
It's okay.
30? So half of his life ago, his mother became a space crack smoking junkie in the desert. So there's that.
He's missed a bunch of time with her, and when he had like the time where she should have been with him, she was probably working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when she wasn't working, she was messed up.
Raffi's a shit mom. I think we can all agree.
No.
That's a bit harsh.
No, I don't think she's a shit mom. I don't think she's a shit mom, but she's somebody who clearly, for some reason, Starfleet did not have, or the Federation did not have the resources to help her. Yep. And that's my problem.
Wait a minute. So it's the Federation's fault.
It's always the Federation's
fault. That broke
up
the family and made her a crack person.
You don't leave people who are struggling, who
that's right.
are trying to do something. The thing is, they thought
she was.
They thought she was crazy, so she, no one was listening to her.
Which is weird because you think the Federation and Starfleet have moved beyond that kind of easy problem to solve.
Well, because maybe they wanted her to believe that she was crazy because they're all lying about something really big that she knows.
Well, that's more likely.
But are the social workers
exactly?
No, exactly. That's the thing.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I agree with that.
But considering all that's happened in Next Generation, with like, you remember the conspiracy episode, with like aliens taking over Starfleet, wouldn't you go, let me think about this. Might be something weird going on.
Yeah, there's precedent for
except
this
if they're
we've had aliens take over Starfleet.
Maybe she doesn't have to be alone, in the desert. Maybe she just needs to maybe she doesn't have to be high on crack, but maybe she's sad just because she's not in Starfleet anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that would do it. Now, I'd like to talk about a character who I believe is named something like Vajazzle. Some people called her. It wasn't quite Witch Hazel.
Vajazzle.
Vajazzle.
Vajazzle, because I think 7 and 9 called her J at one point, so it's like the J sound as a jazz sound.
All I could think of was like. Vajazzle.
Jesus, yeah. I know we were skirting around that.
Yeah. Down there.
That's what it sounded like.
Not a great
space
name.
vag.
Absolutely.
I like to put space
in front of it. So Vajazzle is this character that is basically just an evil Borg harvester.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting job when you think about it. Like there's a lot of expensive gear floating around, and the Romulans have their way of doing an archaeological dig. And Vajazzle had her way of doing it, which was just find Starfleet officers and gut them.
Yeah, and then she's like, she's on space caimans.
Yeah.
Or
Canto Bite.
Or like Cloud 9, but more commercial and seedier.
It was the Star Warsiest setting I have ever seen in Star Trek. It just felt like someone was going to sell Obi-Wan death sticks in any scene. It was the most derivative production design, and honestly,
I would say it's a little different, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
it's one of those things where, because this isn't a Starfleet crew on a Starfleet vessel, we're seeing corners of the Star Trek world that we haven't seen before.
Right.
And they just look like other shows we've seen before.
Sure.
And that's unfortunate. It would be nice to have a little more originality and imagination in there. I did like this crazy reptilian bodyguard who can smell lies.
You didn't like that?
Well, I like it. He makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Yep, that's fair. But again,
it's cool.
Did you notice that twice within 10 minutes, the audience had explained to them that this is a guy who can smell when you lie.
Right.
Yes.
And it was not a cool, fun, interesting mirror. It was just redoubling the same information.
Yeah, it could have been snappier.
Yep.
Because when we find out about that, the thing that they gave him so that he could get through that kind of conversation, it should have been closer together.
Yeah.
The beginning of finding out what they're capable of and him having that should have been closer together so that when as we're learning that can happen, he's almost screwing up until that other thing
as opposed to
kicks
hearing
in.
it said twice.
Exactly. So that it's closer together so we feel the stakes of it.
That's right.
And
the
we're
tension.
concerned.
Yep.
And then right when he's about it like
kicks
in the nick of time.
Yeah.
But it was too far apart and we learned it twice.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being like bam bam and then
efficiency.
Yeah. But
that's
then
how you tell a clean 45
it should have been like it's like no one's reading it to be like this has to get there quicker. Just a little bit faster.
Or more efficiently, or cleaner, or if we only say it once, we have time for something else.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So when they were putting together all that, like Ocean's 11, like...
Or Ocean's 7.
Ocean's 7, I missed opportunity. Situation should have been like, really like, bam, 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 you know? Because that's... when it's done best, that kind of thing. It's a trope. We've seen it before.
We've seen it for decades.
So make it really tight.
Yeah.
You know?
Do it like an Ocean's 11.
Yeah, because I did like Space Dolomite. You
yes!
know?
Oh my god. Rios dressed in that as that character. It seems like we've met this guy for 2 episodes at this point, and to see him willing to do that seems like he must really like these people a lot.
Right.
But I am so happy to see him dressed as a pimp. It made me so happy. On the flip side, getting to hear Picard deliver, I'm going to say the worst line.
Oh dear.
And worst line reading in the history of Patrick Stewart's career.
Yikes.
When he says, "I thought this was suitably sinister," and I just thought, oh. So Jonathan Frakes is having fun with his friend, and is not letting him, is completely letting him off the hook for anything Patrick Stewart wants to do. It was the worst thing. It
actually is reminiscent of Ocean 11, like the first one, because I heard that on that set they just like screwed the dog. They just like were just hanging out. You know, it was like Rat Pack. They were just like
got a crazy
they were
accent.
just like chilling. Yeah. So maybe that's what they were doing
Cheadle's
this
like,
episode.
I'm British now.
Yeah, and they're just like maybe like they're just chilling. Like
for a minute there, I was thinking of Rocky and Bullwinkle for just a minute.
Yeah,
it felt like
he was a cartoon.
It felt a bit.
It was not like Picard. Like it wasn't like because he can make a joke, but it's not his kind of joke.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yes, when you see him
not
dress
his
up,
kind of joke. He would never do that.
Well, and we've seen him on the holodeck dressed as Dixon Hill.
Yeah.
We've seen him on the holodeck dressed as Robin Hood.
Yeah.
And he's still himself.
Yeah, because we've seen him with when he's at like his core, like stripped down, where he doesn't have as many inhibitions, and it's not like that. It's not quite that. You know, remember like season 1 with the
naked now?
Yeah, naked now. He, you know, it's still him.
Yeah.
Right?
But I will see that again.
That's a great episode.
Yeah, so that was awkward, to say the least.
Yeah, I was not really into him playing that character that way. And I thought the eye patch was fun. Like, I thought the outfit was cool.
That's funny,
That's
right?
funny, yeah.
And I don't mind that kind of funny. Like, that could happen. Like, when they were, like, you know, Robin Hood. Like, it's fun, right? But... and that could be very much Star Trek. But when he said that, I was like, "Ugh!" I cringed.
Not the right show.
You're like, "Oh no!
Yeah.
Don't do that."
Yeah. The executive producer Patrick Stewart is in the wrong show, and when your executive producer is able to, like, no one can tell the executive producer no, so he just gets to do what he wants. And that is deeply unfortunate.
It's weird because what's most annoying about that line is that because it's always been a criticism of the character that he's French, and then you know what I mean?
Then he plays this cartoon French bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, really?
Yeah.
What's happening now? Like you're really messing with us.
Hurts me a little bit.
Like I felt like I was being punked.
I was not a huge fan. But I must say
But I'm still holding on. Picard.
Well, let's talk about 7.
I can't quit you.
Yeah,
I
want to talk about 7.
Let's talk about 7 because that's the big event here. She is the guest star in this episode, and it was not clear going into this season what kind of relationship or what kind of screen time 7 was going to have on this show. Is she a part of the crew? It kind of just seems like this was a guest star episode.
I
like
agree.
she was in the previous episode for a split second, and
she got the lightsaber, and then we got
then
onto
off she
the
went.
next-
And yeah, I feel like this episode is probably it. I think that's it for 7.
Oh, I thought she was coming back.
Is she in the next
Have we
episode?
checked?
I don't know. I feel like she's going to be in more than one episode.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. I think she certainly performed a function, and now the team is going to be off in another direction because Picard's expecting her to get picked up by the Rangers and go off and have a good time because his compelling, optimistic speech worked. Right. And then 7 goes down there with 2 blasters, two phaser rifles to murder everyone.
Unless it's a little like Mandalorian, right? With Gina.
Spoiler. Mandalorian spoiler.
Oh, you haven't seen?
I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, we cannot talk Mandalorian. You're missing out. It's
I know. I'm ready. I'm just haven't had the time.
Actually, you know what? You should watch it before we get to the end of Picard because I'm looking forward to comparing and contrasting 10 hours of television during peak TV. That's the era we're in right now of how Star Wars does it and how Star Trek does it. Because I gotta say, so far Star Trek has been terrible at peak TV.
Well, I will watch it. It's on my list of things to watch. I have a lot of things to watch.
It's very good.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to watching it. But I'm also thinking about the audience watching this who may be like in my position.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Spoilers.
Well, we will just say that there's a character who shows up in The Mandalorian and disappears for a minute, and then she
comes back, and it's a really good way to. I mean, The Mandalorian.
I'm thinking is what might happen with 7.
Well, I feel like the arc of The Mandalorian, where it's like introduce a bunch of characters and put them to good use. I'm really hoping Picard pulls that off because I'm feeling like this show is giving us a bunch of characters who don't necessarily leave the show in the same way as on The Mandalorian, but we're building a crew. And when I saw 7, I was like, wow, 7's in the crew now. And then at the end of this episode, she's not in the crew. This was her guest star episode, which I'm not opposed to either. But it's weird that the cadence of the show was add these people, add these people, add these people, add this person. And then that last person is not on the team. It's weird.
I gotta say though, I love the fact, I think this is the best thing they've done so far. I love the fact that 7 is in this. Whether it's just temporary or permanently. I feel like, okay, now it's got legs, and you got someone who's going to drive it forward. And she arrives with a bang, and she's got her attitude, and she's got history with whatever the woman is on the planet. And really, she's there.
She has history with Picard, because she was in the collective, and she might know...
It's true.
Technically,
could
she
know
was
a
in the
lot
collective.
about him.
Yeah, because she was in the collective when he was in the collective.
That's
right.
Yeah. So she can know a lot about him.
And having said that, I found it
intimate.
peculiar that we had a moment where Raffi and Rios had to discuss the fact that those two characters haven't met, as if the audience would somehow not know that,
right?
Or as if
it's not. Yeah.
It mattered.
It's not important.
No.
It's not important.
But somebody watching the show for the first time, maybe they may not know.
No, I mean, it's not important that they hadn't met before.
Okay. And it's not important that Raffi and Rios discuss whether they know each other.
What's more important is that in some way they have met.
Yeah.
Because they were part of the same collective.
Right.
You know, that they know each other's thoughts maybe on that level. Which is not the first time that's happened with Picard, you know, like with Vulcans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that, I was waiting, I was like, are they going to let her leave this show and not have them have a conversation about being both being bored at some point? And they didn't do that. And I actually said, yes. Like, I out loud.
I heaved a deep sigh of relief.
And it was really touching.
Yeah.
It was really short, but it hit home. And I almost cried because it had the Voyager music when she was about to transport.
Yeah.
It kicked in the Voyager theme. And I was, like, very emotional about that.
Yeah, I gotta say, they got,
I do love Voyager.
Well,
I know you're not crazy about it, but I love the idea of Voyager. I love the idea.
You can love it. You can love it.
Well, I love the idea of Voyager, and that's why I like Battlestar Galactica so much. Because that's what a good show that does that is like. I mean, Voyager, I would say you could make a mega mix of one season of great Voyager episodes.
Some badass
There's like
episodes.
22 good episodes of, like, great episodes of Voyager. Yeah. But out of 7 years, that's pretty rough.
Well, I will say this. I would rather have 7 seasons of Voyager than no Voyager. Right? Like,
sure,
that's my
Which
way of
I wonder, Would you rather have... This is an interesting question. Would you rather have 2 seasons of Discovery or no seasons of Discovery?
I'd rather have 2 seasons of Discovery.
Interesting.
I will always take more Star Trek.
Absolutely.
The funny thing is, for me, I feel like I just saw the artwork for the 3rd season.
Yeah.
It looks fucking cool. I'm very excited for what they're doing with this 3rd season of Discovery, and I really wish the first 2 seasons never happened.
Right.
And we were just going right into the 29th century.
If you put it like as though we're just rebooting it and they're starting from there, then yeah, I would rather have nothing as long as I knew that it was going into something where we didn't have to deal with all this canon, like pre-Kirk canon, which
is terribly wrong.
It's like after all the time that we've waited to have like a new Star Trek, because we went back with Enterprise 2, and then all the movies have been like Kirk movies, and like to go back again pre-Kirk, I was like, oh my god, it's supposed to be about the future moving forward. I mean, maybe writers are having a hard time coming up with what's new.
You just need better writers,
right? Because even in Picard, we're struggling with 21st century issues, right? So maybe they're just not thinking ahead the way Star Trek writers used to think ahead.
Yeah, Star Trek writers used to invent the future.
Yeah.
And that's why we have cell phones like this. Like
that's the reason.
That's why we have iPads. That's why it's called an iPad. Like, we literally watched the future get invented after we watched it on television.
Yes.
And I feel like
it should be informing us of where our possibilities of where to go.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe they're getting caught up in what's happening now rather than thinking about where we're going.
Yeah, and
that's insightful. Actually,
I feel like Star Trek
Old Star Trek did do that.
Yeah.
Look to the future, and new Star Trek doesn't seem to do that as much.
Trek hasn't done it since Voyager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's difficult after Voyager to continue inventing new things, but the bioneural gel packs were cool new things. Like, you just have to keep inventing new things. That's your job if you write Star Trek. And so on this show, it's interesting in Picard that they have these holographic interfaces. And, if they hadn't completely screwed up and involved that holographic interface in Discovery, I'd be like, wow, how cool, that's what the future's going to look like. But man, he's got busted technology from the past. I don't even know what it is.
I will argue that they took that stuff back because of Control, but then
you're doing their retconning for them. I like it.
I know, I'm trying. But then, if that's the case, then they need to talk about Control in Picard.
Right? Yeah. I think it's just... I think it's the fact that they don't have people across the board making the same show. Yeah. You need to have a kind of singular vision, like Roddenberry had, to be able to say, listen, this is how food works, this is how religion works, this is how... All of these things dovetail together. And you can't just have one person over here who's like, I'm going to do costumes, and they're not in any way related to I'm going to do the interfaces. The LCARs in TNG work with the visuals of everything across the board. And on Discovery, obviously, that was a problem. But a lot of it is because we had a show that we had an IP that was dormant for decades, and just sitting there doing nothing, and then J.J. Abrams picked it up and turned it into Star Wars.
Well, I mean, they were talking about Star Trek
that's
fatigue
what he wanted to make.
After Nemesis. They said that's basically what killed Star Trek, is Star Trek fatigue.
It's not Star Trek fatigue, it's bad Star Trek.
That was that was the rationale of the time, because you had Enterprise, you had Nemesis, you had Voyager, I think was roughly ending around that. So there was a bunch of Star Trek,
but there's a business reason for that as well, because Viacom split into CBS and into Paramount, at which point Paramount was like, I guess we'll talk to some people about their ideas for how to make a new Star Trek. And they talked to a bunch of different people and ultimately landed on JJ rebooting things. And from the television standpoint, Les Moonves, legendary piece of shit, worst person you can imagine, who used to be in charge of CBS, he didn't get Star Trek. Because he didn't get Star Trek, he canceled Enterprise and never did any more. And we festered. How can a person
like that get Star Trek?
Yeah, he's a garbage person. He's such a piece of human garbage that him understanding Star Trek would be impossible.
You'd have to come at it from the viewpoint of the Cardassians or something. I don't know.
Right? Yeah.
You'd have to be like
have to be.
There's some
I don't know.
horrible people.
What's the rapiest possible?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, maybe come at it from the perspective of ghosts, space ghosts in a Beverly Crusher episode. Maybe that would be it.
Sub Rosa.
Sub Rosa.
Are we back to this?
We're back to Sub Rosa.
About how I feel about it.
Wait, but wasn't that also in
Teen Vanya?
That was also in Nemesis too, wasn't it?
Oh yes, there's rape in Nemesis as well.
It also weirded me the hell out.
Yeah.
That was a thing.
Yeah.
That happened twice.
Well, and it's interesting because as a Betazoid, Deanna Troi was like a receiver. They used that plot several times to just like attack her.
In TNG, there's some heavy stuff.
Yeah, some pretty brutal stuff. I mean, Les Moonves would understand those things. But I feel like it was just that period of letting the IP fester for a decade, and really a decade and a half on television, where they had to reinvent Star Trek almost from scratch, as opposed to just continuing Star Trek.
But I mean, if they had gone with what Fuller wanted, like
cool retro style,
where it was like a one-off, like to go back pre-Kirk was supposed to be a one-off.
Yeah, for a one-season storyline.
And it was supposed to be an anthology.
Yeah.
And then they just gutted that idea. So that's completely different now. You're coming at it from a completely different standpoint. That would have been really cool. They could have done like American Horror Story like style. They could have had a company. Jason Isaacs wouldn't have gone away. He could be like in another series. He could have been like a young Curzon. That would have been so cool.
I would have
you know what I mean?
Man, we have diverged in this episode, guys.
I know, guys, we're not talking about Picard anymore.
So,
is that what this is about?
Right? So, you know what? Now that we've talked about every corner of Star Trek, I think we can talk about whether this episode tracked it or wrecked it. Vanya, did this episode... Do you want to go first?
No.
No? Voice. Or do you want me to go first? I very rarely go first.
Oh, do you want to... No, I'll go first.
Yeah? Okay, go for it.
I think it tracked it.
Yep.
I did like the episode too. Like, I actually liked it. And maybe it was 7 of 9. See, I just never know.
It was all 7 of 9.
I don't know if it's...
It's just hearing that Voyager sting.
That's it.
Yeah, that almost made me cry.
Is that you?
You know? Yeah, it got me in
that nostalgia, yeah.
Each hub and, you know, and then they actually had that conversation, like him and
did you get your humanity back? Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like this is I feel like that's the thesis for what, like, I love when they come back to what the thesis is for the actual show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Coming back to humanity. The fact that Picard has a very clear connection to all of this as being Locutus before, you know what I mean? And how he sees humanity. How he approaches humanity since he was Locutus is completely different.
He's also uniquely connected to Romulans and Vulcans.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love when they bring it back to that. So I would say that, yes, it tracked it for me in that regard.
Boyce, did this episode track it or wreck it?
Actually, what's interesting is I wonder would Picard have been connected to Icheb and all these other guys at the same? He might have been.
It really depends on how fast connections happen between cubes. So if it's a transwarp conduit that they're conversing through, then absolutely he was connected to everyone, because the Borg Queen was not on that ship as far as we can tell, and he had a connection to the Borg Queen. Right. So yes, I guess the answer is yes. He's connected to everyone.
If Icheb was assimilated around that time, he's young too, right? But
that's true.
But definitely 7 and 9.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I say tracked it. And it could be the same things that Vanya's saying. It could be nostalgia, but I don't think so. I think it had a story. I thought it moved forward. I like that 7 of 9 shows up and is a different 7 of 9 than the one we've known in the past, who was very sort of reserved. And this one is a hard drinking, hair down, sort of...
jacket wearing.
Yeah. Connecting also to Icheb, which is, that really actually bothered me. It shouldn't. I didn't really have... excuse me. Didn't have a deep...
Oh, no.
You all right?
I'm good.
All right.
It's choking.
Maybe you have a deeper connection to Icheb than you think.
Yeah. Are you sure?
I'm getting choked.
Yeah. You're verklempt, yeah.
No, I liked Icheb from Voyager. Obviously, I watch Voyager a lot. and seeing him die bothered me in a way I didn't think that it would, because he was sort of a minor character, but he was still a son of Seven of Nine, in a sense. So there was, I would say, out of all the episodes so far, this one was the one that was most emotional for me, for a couple of reasons. The Picard and Seven of Nine, obviously, connection, that's one. The Icheb thing in Seven of Nine, there was another. The Canterbite thing scene, I could have lived without a little bit.
You just don't like a Pleasure Planet.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. But
what are your thoughts on Risa?
Well, I could go there. I don't need to see it on the screen.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Trekked it.
Okay. I must say that because this episode managed to show me a horrible thing that happened to Seven of Nine and make her transition into being this brutal ranger feel very earned. It felt like we're finally getting to see how time moves forward for characters in a real way. Because I still don't buy this Picard. I don't buy this Jean-Luc. He's a bit too much of he's a bit too stupid, to be honest. He's a bit too stupid.
Yeah.
If his Ironic syndrome was making him say things crazily,
Yeah.
or making him start fights with Romulans in frontier towns, or making him,
But he's
just
like 80.
Yeah,
He's not going to start a fight with anybody.
Well,
You're down. Oh, Jesus, he's dead.
If we had a reason to think
Yes.
that he was losing it,
Yes.
I would be more into his zany, weird Picard. But I don't see him as a man who's getting foggy and has geriatric confusion.
Right. They haven't explained that enough. They haven't connected that meeting that he had with his doctor enough to his behavior.
Absolutely.
So if they had done that, that would be good. But he's not as cautious anymore. He's
not as intelligent.
He's not as diplomatic. He's not. Yeah, he doesn't
strategic.
He doesn't have that intelligence. He seems to be in some ways quite softer.
Yeah.
But that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there is not he's not wise. You know,
with age, you'd like to think that someone who was that diplomatic and strategic and intelligent would just be better at all those things. And I guess making wine and getting drunk made him worse. But I feel like this episode itself had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there was this beautiful moment where Picard talks Seven down off a ledge, and you feel like, all right, Picard can still can still give us a good speech. And then the fact that they subvert that and she goes back down to kill everybody. I just thought that was a really cool way to subvert expectations and still give us all the characters we wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had a beginning, a middle, and an end that felt like a Star Trek episode.
And
This episode trekked it for me. And it's not, again, it's not good peak TV. They're wasting time all over the place. But it's a Star Trek episode.
I wasn't expecting her to go back down.
I wasn't expecting her to go back because when he wins, he wins. He's a speech maker.
Yeah.
When he makes those speeches, it got her to come and help him. You know what I mean? It usually works.
Yeah.
But Seven is shown she's her own person. You know what I mean?
But she's so kind that she doesn't want him to know that she's doing it.
I like that, but also. Yeah, she didn't want to mess with the old man.
Yeah.
But also, I like that because of individuality. Because when I was watching Iborg, and Descent, that idea of individuality is something that you want, or desire as a Borg. And that he could tell her what she, something, but she's like, well, I'm going to make my own choice because she can do that now.
Yeah.
Right? So that's different for her, making her own choices. And I liked also to see Rios talk her down from it too, in a different way, because his way is basically saying, I don't care.
Yep.
Which I kind of love. He's like, I don't care about anything, but these people won't survive.
Yeah.
He's like, but really, I don't care, but do the math.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, I kind of like that because you kind of learned something a little bit about the character.
Yeah. I feel like this episode really gave us a lot of characterization. And, it managed to move the story forward. It managed to tell a contained story. And we learned a lot about the characters. To me, that's an episode of Star Trek.
I almost feel like it should have been called Perfectly Imperfect, because that's what Maddox says about the girls. And then it reminded me that that Stephen Hawking says something about, like, the universe is not, like, perfect. That's one of the, like, the main rules, is like we wouldn't exist if everything was perfect. Yeah. And he's in he's in Descent.
He's in Descent
with a few. And that would have been like, whoa, tied so many things together. Yeah.
Well, we are now halfway through this show.
Already, and hardly anything's happened.
Yeah, it's remarkable. They've put a team together, and now they know where to go. So we've got 5 hours left to see what they do with that information.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited for what could happen next. I do and don't want to go to the artifact because I can't stand those two Romulans.
Yeah.
They're just so boring.
They're boring.
Oh my goodness.
But Hugh is there, and he's lovely.
It's
and
so refreshing.
Well,
we watched the whole.
Is Hugh really that lovely?
I found Hugh lovely.
Great in, like, TNG. Is he great in this?
No,
I like him a lot.
He's so sensitive, and I like the idea, that he wants to be like a mentor to Soji. Like, he understands that her intelligence, and like he sees something in her, and I feel like that's reminiscent of the way Geordi saw something in him. Like, he wants to be able to. He's like giving back. It's so sweet. Yeah. He's like human,
Let me ask you a question. I'm wondering, the great mystery with this last episode. What do you think? What's Agnes? Is it? Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you think is this thing that Agnes knows that she had to kill Maddox for?
I imagine Commodore O told her something that's a lie, in order to make Agnes willing to kill Bruce. What it is, no idea where they're going to take that. But I feel like whatever it was that O said is not true, and that's going to hurt later.
But it would have to be major for her to be a murderer, right? So
yep.
I'm just wondering, like, what could she possibly have said that would make her
bad.
Yeah, maybe Agnes is evil.
Or maybe she's just been bad all along.
She's like the Doctor in Lost in Space. It's like, what are you doing on the ship? Just killing everybody. She just goes around throwing people
Dr. Smith is so great at the end of season 2. She's great. Parker Posey kills it in that show. Anyway, that's it for this episode. We're excited to see where things go next. I must say, my partner, she does not particularly like Star Trek, and so we've been watching this show, and after this episode, she was like, I really don't know if I care. Yeah. I'm not so interested. The first episode, she loved it, but she's losing steam now. Yeah. So I'm curious if this show can pull it out of the fire for non-Trekkies. Because us talking about whether a Romulan ship can warp or not is, like, fascinating for us. Right. But does the everyman watching this show give a crap about what's happening at this point? I'm going to see how long it takes her to just check out entirely.
I definitely think this particular episode was helpful for that, for getting people over into the final episodes, partly because there was no artifact scenes. Yeah. And that's kind of upsetting that there were no artifact scenes, so we're like, like we're having like a party. Yeah. And that's not cool.
But I think part of that is just casting. I find the two teeny bopper Romulan characters so uncompelling. It's not just the words they're saying, it's the way they're saying it.
Do you think it's just casting?
I honestly think
it's the characters. The characters, the writing, and the scene. You could have friggin' De Niro playing that, and we wouldn't be interested.
That's interesting. I'm somewhere in between both of you, because I feel like Matt's might be right, because when Ramda was there, she was practically comatose, and I was like involved. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I was like nervous for her. I like felt a lot from her, and she was like almost brain dead. You know what I mean?
When Soji shares a scene with literally anyone else, I'm into it. So I'm going to go ahead and say is the cast.
Even that little friend that she had from the beginning. Lovely. Wasn't she? Oh, she was a Trill. Yeah. Their little Trill friend. I was like, damn, bring her back.
even that guy who was standing up in the rafters talking about the rules of the artifact. I thought he was neat.
You think it's just the actors?
I think it's just those two characters being played by those two actors. I'm
somewhere in between.
It's the writing.
Somewhere in the middle.
It's the scene and the writing. It's like
because I feel like there's nothing happening there. So it's partly writing.
The scenes do not turn.
Flirtatious.
Well, I think a huge thing is that none of those scenes
turn. Oh, you slept in that bed.
They don't. Oh yeah. Yeah. Where the idea that at the beginning of a scene and the end of a scene, something has changed. Which means you watched that scene for a reason.
Yeah.
But that never happens with those characters
except
in
except in that one episode with Hugh.
Yeah.
Where there actually was something that happened. There were steps taken. Things change. Like, it's like they have a lot of, like, two-hander scenes in the artifact, but with nothing really said. With nothing said and nothing changing the scene. You don't need to be in a scene if nothing changes. The first scene that we have with the Romulan brother and sister, remember, that was a repeat conversation. Yeah, again. That was like, remember, we did not learn anything new from it. No. And it was supposed to be this big reveal because all of a sudden we realized that she was working with him. And then we did not feel anything. Yeah.
Nothing. And why don't we feel anything is the question.
The scenes aren't written to be compelling, and the performances are not pulling that out of the fire.
Because it's the weirdest thing. I feel literally nothing when they come on.
What do you guys think? When you watch this, do those two Romulan characters speak to you? Do you enjoy when they're on camera? I'm curious if anybody does. I mean, so let us know in the comments if it's something that we're just three people who we don't like these guys. I'm curious. But next week we'll be back with regularly scheduled releases, and we're looking forward to talking about the back half of season 1 of Picard with episode 6. See you then. Bye.